Initially, I wasn't expecting to find much. The area was unmarked and in a relatively unknown remote canyon, surprisingly. America's last known narrow-gauge railway, I mused. Washed away, nearly a century ago. They called it a 1,000-year flood at the time that ultimately destroyed this little-known short line. A short line along canyon walls as deep as I've ever seen amongst the dry plains surrounding it. I read about several of its ingenuitive features along what little stretches of track simply hadn't vanished yet. I was amazed, intrigued at the fact I hadn't heard of it. Hiding in plain sight, amongst some of the most beautiful country in the rugged West. On the contrary, I quickly realized it lies in a location one simply cannot narrate or fly a drone around while eating hot wings in a car. Would be nice rattling off facts and locations from Wikipedia in a monotone voice while putting oneself to sleep. However, no, it simply wouldn't work here. It needed to be seen, and maybe why I was having such a hard time with the relative information available. The empty track and the history it belongs to in hindsight indeed did require precise vigilance and a proper dose of curiosity to certainly appreciate the wonders I discovered still left behind. Now, you can't really make out what I'm headed to right now. It's so hidden, and it's in this huge boulder wash. If you kind of just look at all these boulders that just fell off this cliff wall. But we're gonna head somewhere up over that, and that should be where this history lies, and you'll gain a full perspective of it as we get closer. It's really interesting how it hits you. This old rock is certainly exceptional. You can just see how fractured it is. It's beautiful. Moss growing on it from the river right below us. We've kind of broke out of this boulder wash, and we're coming up on an interesting feature. I don't know who's more excited, me or Greta. It's so dense back here. Check this out. Look at this. See that? That is a foundation from the old trestle. Now this railway was 3-foot narrow gauge rail, in the last carrier in the United States to utilize that rail of 3 foot, the true narrow gauge. And it was washed away from a flood and ultimately decommissioned after about 20 years of use. A nearby mine failed, and you can see the old trestle foundations. Check those out. Super cool. Very dense, but you can see this. There used to be a trestle, and you see the other foundation right there, sitting right on granite, that connected this whole area together. And right there is our first tunnel that spanned this using a trestle. And you can hear the river next to me. Super phenomenal history, and it's kind of off the beaten path, but it's the real deal. A real deal narrow gauge rail that cut through a remote mountain pass. And it actually connected the Union Pacific back in the day. It's definitely a bog.
Look at this. These stacked rocks right here. Not sure what this is in regards to the railway. You can see it's definitely man-made. Interesting feature here. I don't know if this was a rough foundation, but it definitely had a part in the railway. Oh yeah, I got bear scat right here. Look at that. That is bear scat feeding on berries. So he runs this right here, and he lives down in that bog. Surely bear scat, and you can kind of see the paw prints. That's moderately fresh. So this is the most prominent archway on the old trestle here. And I'm kind of keeping my eyes out because there was definitely a bear here within the last couple days. But you can make out the foundation of the other trestle leg sitting right there on that granite. And it really just shot out of this hill and connected all the way to that. So I will provide drone footage. There's a couple more features I want to check out, but I'm almost certain there is a bear near us. And this right here is definitely bear scat, and it's pretty fresh. You can tell it's all berry he's been eating. That looks very fresh because it's hidden in the shade and not dried out by the sun. So there's one around here. But to reach our next feature, we're going to climb this and go in there. I'm sure this bear is within listening distance, but we're going to back off a little bit. So this is the hike to it, and look at it right there. Now this is certainly the bog he's been down in. You can see it runs straight up the side of this mountain. Check that out. We have our first hint here of narrow gauge railway right here. I'm checking these crevices because this is by far the coolest area in this little microzone I'm in. Interesting. Interesting to see that rail here still. Tunnel is nearly collapsed. I can kind of make out some core bores right there for dynamite blasting on the top of the tunnel. But it's really a phenomenal section. So we're going to get a closer look here. This is prime area for rattler. And I can see the other side of this tunnel. I'm just hoping there's not a bear enjoying the cool air of this tunnel. Really, really phenomenal. I'm going to give it a moment more of time and then approach. Can you make it, Grady? Come on. All right. Look at that. It looks like it's a double. Holy cow. Just keeping an eye on everything, but what a tunnel. Look at this. See those bores in the side right here for blasting? Looks like one side was working there and the other side of the crew was trying to keep up. Core board. And whoever was the foreman said, no need. This will work for our narrow gauge railway. 3 foot wide. You can see too how close it is to giving way. See that fracture line? Running right along this. But this is phenomenal. It's almost more like a cave. There's definitely a bear that keeps drawing my attention. That was some fresh scat and he was foraging. This is just magnificent almost. It's pretty surreal. Pretty surreal. Got some bird droppings here. Look at that. What a tunnel. That rock almost looks fractured by fire. And someone was having a fire in here a long time ago. Look at that. So the steam engines, this line being created in 1914, operating in 1917, left a lot of soot on this ceiling. A lot of it. A lot of bird life as well. Oh wow. So you can see the old framing of the tunnel over here also. Kind of watching my back for any curious black bears. Eggshell. And this is definitely some old workings of this tunnel here, support beams. And we've seen that on a lot of our videos. It's almost the exact same format. Would have been a wood reinforced tunnel. And on the other side, look at how big this is. You almost feel dwarfed by this thing. And this cut would have been shielded by rock. Check that out. Super phenomenal. Super cool. And I think the fact that it's so cool is it's almost hidden from plain view. But you can catch little glimpses of it and put it together by just visualizing the extent of this rail network. It's 40 miles long. That's it. Check that out. Oh, a couple pigeons. And this one is a little wider, and you can make out the old rail bed truly beyond this point around the bend. And this is how an old foundation is still standing. Look at this. Little window. There's a pigeon right there. Kind of broke off. It's super cool. Phenomenal section here. Oh my goodness, the views. Just gorgeous. So clear as day, after roughly almost a century of abandonment in near erase, this still stands, and it is in better condition than our initial tunnel, but you can clearly make out this route. This wild route. Isn't that amazing? Narrow gauge, 3 foot, the last in operation in the United States of America, and this is just so cool. I think the window where this granite fractured is my favorite feature. Beautiful. We'll go down this railway a little more and see if there's any other tall tale signs of the past. And being here, you really get a feel of the canyon this line rode on. Just steep, rugged, steam locomotive right through the mountains. Too cool. So this bear has been using this area. He's been following this old rail bed. You see the scat right here. Beyond the scat, you see these old rail ties right here. And the old rail bed that's just about overgrown. He's definitely been using this rail bed to get to wherever he's going. And I think that bog's where he hunkers down for the day. Really interesting. So now that we've covered this section of rail, I think we're going to head to the dam, wherever that dam was that broke and rendered this railway useless for 10 years nearly before they decided to fix it up. And then the Great Silver Crash ultimately did this line in. So we're going to try to cover the spot where this natural disaster occurred. And we're going to head down the road to that and see if there's any other notable landmarks along this old railway. All right, Greta, ready to get out of Bear Haven? That was just stunning. Some of the terrain that this was built on is unbelievable. Back in the 1915s, 1910, turn of the century, people were chugging away at this railroad. Steam locomotives. Oh, I missed this coming through. Definitely something got a hold of a Bambi, and I'm assuming it's that bear. This was within the month, so we are in his haven. Interesting thought here. Come on. That kind of waltzed into maybe a makeshift bear den. Old rail tunnel, huh? You like that old rail tunnel, Mr. Bear? Well, I'm just here admiring it. He's definitely very active in this area right now. Now, this is a side quest. I didn't punch in the coordinates here to the old dam site before I got into this canyon. So I know I'm close to it, and I'm kind of just dry firing, looking down every canyon gulch to find it. It's on a creek bed, but I stumbled across this. Check out this, U.S. forest logging. This is a rare sight nowadays, but a lot of this looks like it was infected with the beetle and it's been chopped down. One thing that's really stuck out is this giant log right here. Look at the rings on that. Beautiful. You can see this was dead wood that they removed, which is good for the forest because you're not creating a natural tinderbox when you kind of manage this stuff. It's a lot of log. These logs have been sold It's really cool to see. But onwards we go, and looking to discover the dam site that nearly collapsed this ancient railroad, this narrow gauge railroad running along a river's canyon. And it's really rough back here, but pretty, real pretty. I'll put the bird up, but across from here, you can prominently see the rail grade. And this entire area was flooded out and destroyed part of that old narrow rail gauge. And you can really get an idea of the canyon depth here. It's just, this is the last visible segment as well as you're going through this canyon following the 40-mile stretch, which we are doing, but this is the best way to view it. And there's actually an old trestle foundation right up over there. I'm going to scope out. I can't tell if down here is a game camera of some sorts. So I'm going to get a look at that. Yes, that is a game camera. Why it's down here, I'm not sure. But it's hanging out. It has a view of this beautiful canyon. And I'm finding some really old beer cans down here as well. Beautiful area. And there our trestle is, or what remains of it. As you can see, a very deep canyon. Just stunning. Beautiful area. But I'm going to put the bird in the sky and keep going down the trail. So we're getting pretty close to what I think might be the site of the dam. But I noticed this right on the side of the road here. Looks like a primitive cattle corral, but this monument.
Oh, that must be a grave right there.
Where?
Over here, to your right.
You see a grave site? Okay. Look at this. This was a flagpole or something of sorts. Yeah, this is an old corral. Oh, there is a grave site right there.
Yeah.
And this corral likely utilized that rail line to transport the cattle. So, George Palmer died of smallpox November 19th, 1881. This was likely his ranch. And you can see the primitive stone for what was a grave, and still is, but barely identifiable. No headstone, it was probably a wooden cross. Really no date on this, how old this is, but you can see the old rock in here. And the large lags. These are really large nails. You can kind of make out right up in there. Interesting little station. Now, you got to remember this is almost 150 years old since this dam collapsed, so it wasn't likely that it was concrete. It was probably a wood dam with a water wheel, but you can see how there is no natural growth right here on this point, and kind of the rock stacked up. See how there's a wall and all the rock just kind of bedded up against these banks? This was clearly the area that the dam was set up, and when it broke, it traveled down this whole valley, and part of the rail line was washed away. And at the time, it being a short line, it wasn't that valuable due to its only purpose was a remote mining town in the mountains. And through our investigation, it's quite clear that that remote mining town was silver based and not the easiest to access. And when silver crashed, the short line really wasn't that vital, or there wasn't a lot of economic gain at the time, because this was peak capitalism. This was Wild West era. There was still original people in this land, and there was fighting, and there was, you know, people coming in and out of town. And to operate a short line, there's got to be the commodities, the people, and the transportation. So you would have traveled that short line from a Northern Pacific, or I'm sorry, Union Pacific depot, and ended up, I'd say about 15 miles that way and to the right. But this area has a lot of power, and what they were doing damming it up, I'm not sure. I'm not too sure, but it's just beautiful now. And you can see some of the erosion on these banks on the high water mark as well that you don't see down here. This has been eroded clearly from a long time, from years and years, but I'm thinking this is where the initial break was, and then you see how the ground's flat here, almost level for a building site. They'd catch the water coming around that bend. But as always, I'm gonna head down the trail, and I appreciate your time, and I'm really happy to share today with you. And I hope today's treating you well, and thanks for coming along. We'll see you on the next one. Thank you, guys.
Soul searching, fall apart, tunnel vision, hiding in the dark. Well, I ain't gonna holler before I really bleed. Salvation or quick fix remedy,